not a problem. Okay, so let's jump in and start sharing my screen, and we'll start with the firm's content. That's where that's where I like to start, so that way everyone knows what you have menu-wise before we go into reviewing all of the AI pieces. Okay, now I've got that pulled up. And share. All right. So you guys have the new Lexis Plus AI upgraded platform. We'll go over all of the ins and outs of the new features and functions that come with it. But first, I still want to highlight just the menus and the content that the firm has so that everyone knows what's out there and what's available. First thing, obviously, is the AI piece, the Lexis Plus AI drafting with practical guidance. All Matthew Bender Library National, that is secondary material. So secondary sources published by Matthew Bender that don't have a specific state name in the title of the treatise, right? So think like Moore's Federal Practice, Nimmer on copyrights, Corbin on contracts, right? Those types of things are part of that national library because it covers the subject across multiple jurisdictions versus like in Texas, we have the Texas Transaction Guide. That would be in the state menu. Let's see. Got some people coming in the.
I'll take care of this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. The All West Jurisprudences Library. So you guys were able to maintain those that Westlaw library where it has the jurisprudences from West that you're able to license. National Primary Plus is all of your primary law. So cases, statutes, codes, administrative agency materials, all of the law reviews and restatements are also included in that. So that is a very robust menu. 50 state treatises and guides library. So that is that's an interesting source. That menu I am not super familiar with, but it looks like a hybrid between the 50 state surveys and the Matthew Bender.
It is. It's like the Illinois Practice Library, the Missouri Practice Library, all of those individual state libraries versus the national Matthew Bender National.
Okay, so it's like the Matthew Bender state menu.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, it's just that title. I was like, okay, that's throwing me off a little bit. So that's the flip side to that All Matthew Bender Library National. Now you with the 50 state treatises and guides, that's everything that Matthew Bender publishes that has a state name in the treatise. So that covers you there. So that to say, you're going to have secondary content that's going to cover you for any subject that you're going to be dealing with, and then the state coverage will vary depending on the jurisdiction and what kind of secondary materials we have for those particular states. Now, the one below that, the National LexisNexis Forms, that is going to be our forms collection that comes from a couple of different places, but majority of it is coming from our secondary content. So that's pulled and extracted into its own kind of source. Then you have the all briefs pleadings menus. So the nationwide briefs pleadings menus, those are actual court filings from across the country. And that is pulling from two sections down where it says everything court link. It is pulling some from that court link tool. Court link is the bigger collection. So think court link is our version of Pacer on steroids for those that have used it, where you do your real-time docket management. If you want to set tracks on certain cases and follow them, set alerts for new filings, for new types of cases or new filings with certain clients. Being able to look at those dockets and see those real time. Those documents within those dockets, the briefs, pleadings, motions, there's millions of them that are pulling in our nationwide briefs, pleadings, motions menu on Lexis from that court link tool. But it's not everything, but it is a very large collection. So most folks, if they're looking for an example of a particular type of motion that they're having to draft, they want to find something to use as a template. Definitely start out on the Lexis side, looking for that within the nationwide race pleadings and motions. And if you don't find something there that you can use, you can always move over to CourtLink and look at that bigger collection to see if you find it there. But in between those two menus is Lexis Create. So this is the replacement for our tool, Lexis for Microsoft Office. This is the one that integrates with Microsoft Word. So it's the document creation editing tool where you can check your cites, check your quotes, create and insert a table of authorities, check for proofreading errors, grammatical errors, right? Numbering errors, things of that nature. And there's a lot that you can do with that piece, and you have the AI functionality too. So even with an open Word document, you can utilize the AI functions to help generate sections for a document that you're working with, or ask questions about a document that you have open, have the tool summarize the document that you have open in Word. So there's a lot that you can do with Create other than just the drafting and the editing piece. It does have the functionality from the AI as well. So that we currently have at 10 licenses. If that ever needs to grow or change at all, just let Jessica know. She can get that taken care of for you all. But right now we've got down to 10 licenses, and hopefully those folks know who they are, because I don't. Jessica may have those names and have that all set up already, hopefully. And for those folks, if they have not gone through a create session yet, you'll definitely do one in the near future that's just on that tool, because it does take, a whole separate like 30 minutes just to go through everything that tool can do.
Looks like
Cheryl?
Jackson has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, so everybody on this call, I believe, has access to everything except for Lexis Create.
Okay.
We have those 10 Lexis Create licenses, and to my knowledge, I don't think we've really handed out any of them. And so if anybody is interested in trying that out and learning more about it, reach out to me and I'll get that set up for you. Because as is, I don't think we're really using those licenses yet.
Perfect. There you go. So those that want to use that, definitely, I would definitely take advantage of that just because of everything that it can do. But yeah, let Jackson know. Talked about everything CourtLink. So that's our real-time docket management tool, our version of Pacer on steroids, but it also includes some state court coverage. So everyone has access to that. And then everyone also has access to CLE on demand. So that's an interesting piece. Because it's a repository in our a separate website that we have called LexisNexis University, where you can go in and get all of your CLE for the year. I need to actually go in and grab a couple of hours. I'm behind on mine, so I need to get in there and do some sessions. But I'll show you how to access that. Hopefully, everyone's been able to get onto at least make sure that their IDs are synced and linked up to that. But if not, you can let us know and we can work that out. But does anyone have any questions on the menus before we actually start looking at the tools?
Doesn't look like there's questions.
All right, I'm going to take the no question, or the silence is no questions. I don't want to watch this short video. Okay. And actually, I don't want to log into that one. I want to log into this one because it has some history saved that I want to look at. Apologies. It's going to make me, I have multiple IDs that I'm having to navigate and make sure that this is not the right one. All right. I'm going to use the one that I have all of my good conversations on before they actually deactivate this ID. I'll have to move all of these conversations. Well, let's go here. All right. So now when you log in, you probably will not default to this AI icon. Everyone should still default to the research piece, right? Where they're looking at the main search bar, and the whole 9 yards. So now you'll have the additional AI assistant icon here. When you're on the research side or any other side of the fence, right, it will follow you. This little icon will follow you throughout the system. So all that means is it needs to be looked at as an assistant, right? It's there to be a second set of eyes. It is there to help when needed. So if I'm going through and I'm asking a particular question, and let's say whatever it happens to be, let's go with right. I can just ask the question now with the search bar being expanded to include an kind of a extension of the natural language searching. You've got terms and connectors, you've got natural language. You can just ask the question, right? If you guys have not tried that yet, go for it. You can just throw your jurisdiction at the end, and that will tailor your responses, especially in the Lexis answers section. All right, so some of the functionality with Lexis Plus, if you have not seen some of this, you've got your Lexis answer section up here. That will give you up to 10 responses. I always look for the more current, right? Here's 2020, 6 years, it's giving me the statute. 2022, 6 years, there's the statute, right? So, and I'm getting consistent answers. So now I've got my quick answer, right? But as I'm going through, let's say I want to look at, I'm reading these cases, I'm doing my regular research the way I normally do because I don't have to totally change the way that I do things just because we have this AI piece now, but it is there to help. So I'm going through and I have this open on the side, right? And I'm reading this and I say, you know what? I am not familiar with this case, or well, actually, I'm not familiar with this one. If I want to summarize that, do the summarize, I can throw the citation in here. So let's go 953 F3rd, right, 541. I can have this tool running here on the side as I'm going through, and I'm still reading because I am notorious for coming into a case, looking through it, and I'm about halfway through. I'm like, well, that looks good. Let me click on that, right? And then I'm out of that document. I restart reading. About halfway through that one, I see another link. Like, oh, that looks good. Let me click on that one. Then the next thing I know, I'm 5 or 6 clicks away from where I originally started, and I never even finished that case. This serves a couple of purposes. One, it gives me the quick kind of Cliff's Notes version of what's in that document, but it also creates this running list for me that I can keep going. So if I have another one that I'm running across, like 785 Northwest 2nd, 796. So I'm basically putting a pin in these cases where I can come back, where I want to come back to them later. But it also integrates with the ask a legal question, right? So, oh, I didn't put the summarize there. I have to click the button. And then it makes me do this. But you get the idea here. This is how most folks are going to kind of integrate their conversations. But as it's going through, like the ask a legal question piece. Oh, I didn't spell that right. Or I put a D in there. It's not going to pick that up. But going to the main functions of the AI tool as I'm going through, another option other than the summarize, right? If I'm going through and I see something that makes me develop some sort of question in my head, or I know I need to research something a little bit further, I can just ask that question here and have that answer real quick. Like I had an assistant, if I were to, ask some, hey, what about this? Or what about this? As I'm reading this particular document, I can have this tool go and make that analysis and find those answers for me, so that I don't have to basically start a whole nother research project in the middle of one that I'm already working on. Okay. So that's how you can kind of integrate these side by side in the way that you currently do things. Now, going into the AI assistant by itself, you have the 4 tasks here: conversations, collapse. Your conversations hold for 90 days. So same as your history when you're doing traditional research. Anything you do on this platform, it ties to your ID for 90 days. Same with the AI, the conversations that you have, unless you want to delete them earlier, you can go in and delete these. You can see I've kind of got a bunch of crazy stuff here, but the 4 tasks that you can accomplish currently with our AI tool, you've got the ask a legal question, generate a draft, summarize a case, and also a statute. You can throw a statute in and we'll summarize that too. And then upload to summarize or ask a question. So I talked a little bit about the ask a legal question. You have some examples. So the tool is really good about helping you develop the question, right? Giving you examples. There's also a prompt tips link here, but that's really going to be a learned skill, I should say. Prompt writing is a little bit different from what you would throw into the legal research box, right? So we're used to natural language terms and connectors where you're using algorithms, right? The system is doing this overly complex word find to retrieve results. On the AI side of things, whether it's ours or someone else's AI, that uses LLM, large language model technology, to process the query and look more at the intent, to have that more human-like interaction, right? Because if you were to go down the hall and ask a colleague, what does this mean? They're not going to reply with, I found these documents that have, well, I know this document has that word in it. This document talks about that. This document has that phrase in it. They're going to give you the answer, right? Or what they know to be the answer. That's going to be more like how this is going to interact with you. It's more conversational in nature. So if your question, has some background to it, you need to kind of prep up and tee up your question. Definitely feed that information into the tool because it won't do anything but help as far as giving the tool context to give you an answer. So the same way, think of it as if you were to go down the hall and ask somebody a question. You may need to give them some context. You're not just going to start with the ask, right? Is this legal? Okay, is what legal, right? You have to go through the steps. Well, this happened and this happened, or this is these are the circumstances. And in this scenario, is this a violation of XYZ, right? You'll have to, if you can give the tool that type of context, and it will use all of that to process your query. I like to put the jurisdiction in the prompt itself. So I would say, in Minnesota or under Minnesota law, and then ask the question. You can use the select jurisdiction option here, and that would apply that jurisdiction to the entire conversation where you have the 10 back and forth interactions with the tool before you have to start a new conversation. But really, you're only limited when I talk about the AI tool anywhere, you're really only limited by your own creativity. So if you have a way of integrating or mixing and matching these tools to work together to accomplish what it is you want them to accomplish, by all means, use it in that manner. However, it's going to make your life easier. The ask a legal question, I usually position this as if you start your project or if you were to start any kind of matter on Google, right? If you go to Google for anything and you're asking it just general questions, right? Just to get a basic knowledge of something, you can now do that within a safe, private LLM within Lexis plus AI so that you're not going to potentially release any firm proprietary information, client confidential information. It's a closed system, so it's not tied to the internet. The responses are then going to come from our legal authority. It's not going to come from just everything that's on the internet. So it gets you, a more relevant list. You can even ask the same questions that you would under that Lexis, the Lexis answers function over here, and the response is going to be a little bit different. So if I were to come here and ask that same question.
We're going to take a quick pause. It looks like there was a question in the chat.
Okay. Let's see.
I think it was Jen.
Yeah, it was me. I was just wondering, a common thing I do in searches, I'll want to know what the outcome of the case was, a case where summary judgment was granted on a particular topic, which in like a traditional query can kind of get you a lot of different stuff, because if you just include grant exclamation point, you might get granted in part, reversed in part, or or denied in part. Is this a little better at doing something like that, where you can figure out the outcome?
That's something you could probably work into a prompt. Like if you, how would you originally phrase, like what would be the other part of your query to get the results that you would then want to see, just the ones that were granted? Is it just anything that you're researching?
Yeah, like if I was moving for summary judgment on statute of limitations and I want to find cases where it was granted under my particular facts scenario.
Yes. So you would be able to ask the tool to find you case law from this jurisdiction that deals with, with your fact pattern that has motion for summary judgment that were granted. Or you would have to play around with that prompt. But yes, you should be able to formulate that in a way in which it would respond with a case list for you. But that's a good one. I'm actually going to write that down, because I can play around with that to see what would be the best way to, whatever. So a motion for, whatever, granted in specific jurisdiction.
And I guess since I've got my mic on, I'll ask a second question, which is totally unrelated. But if you've got a judge in a case, would you be able to ask it things like, how has my judge traditionally ruled on these particular issues?
So there is a tool called Context that does language analytics on judges for motions. It analyzes up to 100 different motion types so that it can do just that. It breaks down like how often they grant motions for summary judgment, or grant them in part, or deny them. But then you can break that list down by the subject matter so that you can see those motions, but relate it just to those case types and those subject matters, and see what the numbers look like there, and what language that they cite to when they make those rulings, and what other opinions they cite to, what judges they cite to the most when they make those rulings, with actual excerpts of the language they use on a regular basis. So you can see their patterns, and that way you can cite to the same things and use some of the same language in your documents when you're filing it in front of them to be more persuasive. That I think accomplishes more of that, of what you're asking. But that's not part of, it's not part of this AI. It is AI technology. It's just extractive AI that we've had on Lexis for a while, and it becomes part of your drop down if you have it in your plan. Let me see. None of my IDs show it. Like, that's awesome. We're having.
I can connect with her offline on that one.
Yeah, it would be part of this, and give you those analytics. And the fun part is this AI tool will eventually talk to that tool. So then you would be able to ask it under generate a draft a motion for summary judgment under XYZ, whatever the fact pattern is, for Judge so-and-so, and with the outcome being, that I want the outcome to be, to be XYZ. So it will then pull that analytics from context and see what patterns they have, and it will use that information in the draft that it generates. So that's on the timeline coming, on the roadmap at some point, and it's all happening really quickly. But we don't have hard and fast dates yet. But this tool will at some point integrate with most of our other tools that we have. So that's really exciting. But very good question. So just as an example, let me see. Under Minnesota law with statute of limitations for breach of contract, right? I can throw that in here. When I ran that search over under the main search bar, right, you're getting tons of results. This is more of the kitchen sink method. It's going to find anything and everything that meets those terms and phrases that I've typed in, right? The criteria that I gave it. This is looking more at what I asked, right? What was my actual question? And then it's going to go through the content that it ties to, which is case law, our statutes, codes, constitutions, our court rules. It looks at our administrative agency decisions and looks at our practical guidance, and it looks at all of our Matthew Bender content, which you guys have all of that in your subscription. So it's going to give me the answer with links to supporting material that it used to generate the response, which means I know these are actual real documents because I can click on them and open them up. But what helps with expanding your research, if you start using this tool more to answer your questions and do that legal research, make sure you use the view related material link. That's going to show you the breakdown across the content the AI is tied to, which is going to be the basic kind of what most folks are looking for when they're doing initial research, right? You're looking for cases and codes. It is a much more refined list, right? As opposed to the over 10,000 plus that I was seeing when I asked that same question over here. So think of this as more of a boiled down list to really give me the answer versus anything and everything that could potentially match my terms and phrases. So look at it more kind of in that regard. But now I've got a list, right, of those particular types of documents that answer my question. And that's where if you had asked it for like all of the cases in such and such jurisdiction that discuss XYZ that ended or that had a motion for summary judgment that was granted, this is where the full list would be. But you would have to test that out and probably adjust some of the ways that the prompt is phrased or the order in which your certain terms are to get it to where it gives you that response. And once you have that method down, once you have the formula, I guess is the right term for it. Once you have the formula down for a prompt that works, save it. I have a running list, a document where I've got certain prompts saved because I know that they work. I can just change out certain terms or phrases depending on what I'm asking. But the tool is also going to tell you what else you can do in that conversation. So it's like, oh, I asked this. Okay, now what? Well, if there's something I don't know or I'm not familiar with, I can summarize that particular document, that case, or that statute. If I want to ask this within a different jurisdiction, I can. Or if I like this answer and I'm like, look, okay, that's going to give me a good outline of what I need because I need to use this information to draft a memo. I can use this button here to have it draft a memo based on this output. I'm just curious. I'm looking at something. Okay. It all cites to Minnesota. Minnesota law. You can also ask the tool to regenerate the response using different language. Regenerate it with certain other specific details, right? So if you're not particularly fond of this response, or there's just certain edits you would like to see made, especially on the generation part, which is probably where I should talk about this. But even in your question, you could probably ask this, like if it gave you a response, but it's citing to like federal and state cases, something that I thought of earlier. I haven't had a chance to test it, but I was thinking, I wonder if I could ask it, like regenerate the response, but without citing to federal cases. So that way it would only focus on state material or vice versa, right? Whichever, or only on agency decisions. Someone was dealing with SSI, like Social Security and disability. And there were, certain cases that were cited. And she was like, well, okay, we don't really typically cite to case law in the hearing process because it's all administrative. So, maybe asking it those types of questions, regenerate the response only citing to agency materials and see what it gives you, right? You can definitely play around with it and go back and forth. So that is the ask a legal question piece. Generate a draft. This is the fun part that everyone gets really excited about, but actually this upload to summarize or ask questions has kind of outshined it here lately. But the generative AI is what everyone gets really excited about, because now we're asking the tool to do something for us, right? We're asking it to create new content. Envisioned use cases, what the tool is technically designed to do right now: draft a legal argument, draft a legal memo, a letter, an email, or a clause, right? So the more detailed your input and your prompt is, the more specific your output will be. So especially if you're drafting like a letter or an email that's going externally, if you have the client's name, you can include the name, drop that in the prompt. So it would include that in the actual draft that it gives you. Let me see if I've got one that I have. This is just an example where there was a new ordinance that was passed last year. An attorney was trying to figure out if it had been litigated yet. He was trying to find case law that had litigated this particular ordinance and couldn't find anything because it's so new. Nobody has, brought suit about it yet. So I was like, well, you're probably going to be the first one. So let's see if we can ask the tool, to draft an argument, because his issue was with one particular measure that's in this order that deals with relocation assistance that a landlord is supposed to provide to a tenant if they evict them. And how are we going to enforce that? No one had litigated that yet. No one had actually asked for that yet. So trying to figure out how to do that. So the tool is going to tell you, hey, look, this is the information you gave me. So this is what I'm going to use. This is what I have to go off of. And that kind of breaks it down where you can see, you can tell like, oh, do I need to give it a little more, right? Should I give it more information to be able to draft this? Now, anything that gets generated by AI, whether it's ours or whether it is someone else's, right? It always needs to be looked at as a first draft. You never want to just take that and run with it. A lot of the attorneys that I've talked to, post them implementing the AI piece, they've gotten to where they really like using this to give them a skeleton, give them an outline. I had the one attorney I was talking to this morning. She said, look, these appeals briefs for the SSDI hearing, Social Security hearings that she goes to, she said, usually they take me about 6 hours to draft. She said, but with the last one that I did using this tool, I was able to cut that down to 4. Just like I was able to get it down to 4 hours because I was able to come in and, she has her kind of template that she uses for certain things, and she knows where she needs to supplement and flesh things out. But getting certain arguments and getting the outline and the skeleton of what she wanted in her argument, she was able to start there and then just flesh things out, and it made the process a lot faster. So definitely it needs human review. That is why we're always going to have job security. For one, someone's got to run the AI, but we also have to review it, making sure it says what we want it to say. And it may not be in the tone that you like. It may not be written the way that you would typically write something. So you can definitely come in and modify and edit anything that it drafts. It's going to, if it's based in legal authority, you're going to get those sites, again, being able to look at the related material there. And if I don't like this, the way that it's generated, I can ask it to regenerate it, regenerate with new language. Or now that I have my argument, I can say, what's the other side going to say? So then I can potentially beef mine up, or at least have a heads up and know how I'm going to counteract what they may try to, argue. So it's bullet pointing all of this out for me. So all of the pieces can kind of interact together utilizing the buttons here. So again, here's another one, like regenerate with new language. It's always fun if you have it draft a letter or an email or something, and then you don't like the tone. You can tell it soften tone, or you can tell it, you can type in, tell it, there used to be a button that said make more aggressive, make less aggressive. But they took those buttons away because it was like getting really harsh with the the adjectives and the language, but you can tell it, make more aggressive as a response, and it will change the tone of a letter. And it's pretty interesting how it kind of comes up with all of that. You're like, okay, that's a little harsh, but in any event, the drafting is really cool. And like I had mentioned earlier, eventually these two pieces are going to tie together more, where you can actually upload someone's document, maybe a filing, and ask it to generate a response to that document. So that's going to be very cool when that happens. But again, whatever you can think of that you can use this to make your life easier, it does not have to be exactly case related, right? I've had folks use this to generate emails internally to colleagues or to opposing counsel, asking about certain things or requesting certain things. I've had admins use this to generate memos or emails to employees addressing certain behaviors, or that they're going to be put on a performance plan, right? All of these different ways that you can utilize this tool, whatever it's going to make your life easier. Hey, by all means, that's what I would do. The other thing, since it ties to the practical guidance, there's a lot that's in here. If you guys have ever poked around in the practical guidance, there's presentations, there's videos, checklists, there's 50 state surveys from across the nation on various topics, state law surveys. If you were being tasked to put on a CLE or put on a presentation about XYZ, the practical guidance is a very good tool to be able to give you that kind of information. If that subject is covered in here, which a lot of subjects are covered, you could ask this to generate, that material that you would need. You would just formulate it, tell it to draft you some kind of either a letter, maybe a memo, however you want to phrase it, right? Draft a memo outlining an upcoming presentation that covers XYZ and these specific, sub-subjects within it. That covers this, but details out this, and this. And it'll do it. I had somebody ask me if they could use this to draft an article for their blog. I'm like, well, technically, it's not one of the use cases, but you could ask it to draft you a memo, a letter, or an email that discusses whatever your blog topic happens to be. If it's legal related, we're going to have material on it that you could then copy, paste, and format it however you need to upload it to your blog. So in theory, yeah, sure. You would just have to test it out. And then obviously when the output is delivered, figure out, does that make sense? Is it detailed enough? Do you want to add more to it, right? But definitely will give you the outline. So a lot of ways that this can definitely make your life easier. And we talked about summarize the case. You guys have seen that. The last piece, upload to summarize or ask questions. So there's a lot of technical things that I've been running into with this piece. You can drag and drop your file, but it's got to be PDF, docx, or text format. We've been saying, the 400,000 character limit, it averages, depending on formatting of your document, font size, spacing, all of those things. It includes spaces and punctuation. 400,000 characters typically equates to about 150 pages, but I will honestly say the last few instances where I've had an attorney actually upload files on their side where I'm just watching them and I see the file size. I've had firms or an attorney upload documents, medical records, exhibits that were, they ended up being over 200 pages, 230, 240 pages. And they were not close to the 400,000 character limit yet. So it may give you more than the 150 pages. That's just kind of what we equate that out to. If it's, Times New Roman, 12-point format, and it's consistent with certain margins, the whole nine. But it'll tell you, like when you upload the document, it'll tell you how many characters are in it. All right, so here, once I uploaded it, it told me how many characters. This one was 60 pages. Once you upload a document, I'll do one real time here in a second, but when you upload it, it gets encrypted and hosted in the cloud so that you can interact with it. So that way your information is protected. That information is not used to train the tool. It doesn't become part of the information the tool uses to respond with either. It is literally just that canned interaction. You're in a bubble at that point with the tool. So if somebody else were to come onto Lexis Plus AI down the hallway, ask it a question that relates to the document that you uploaded, it's not going to use this information to then respond to them. It doesn't work that way. That's not how the system is designed, since it is a closed loop system. So it's privacy by design. Anything you put in as far as prompts go, information and details you give in the prompt, documents that you upload, those are isolated to your own individual ID and password, and they don't go anywhere else. They don't go onto our system anywhere. So when I uploaded the document, you get the option to have the tool. There's two buttons that come up. One says summarize, one says ask questions. I always say click the summarize button because it'll summarize it for you. So then you can see kind of what it's focusing on. If you know there's a particular segment in that type of document that you want to focus on, you'll be able to see from the summary if the tool details that enough, right? So the example that I had earlier in medical records, right? The office visits, what were the results of the physical examinations under each doctor visit, right? Being able to see if the tool was detailing that out or if it's just giving you the highlight summary, because then you'll know what your follow-up question needs to be, right? If you want it to detail out the results of every physical examination for each doctor visit, then that's what your prompt would be, and it would give you the response there. So for example, let me see if this is one that I did that with. This is some medical records that were uploaded. It gives me the nice summary. I asked it to create a chronology just to play around with it. This isn't an advertised function yet, but it will be. So that with a very specific prompt that will give you that chronology. We're working on how to make that consistent. Right now, you can ask it to do certain things and it may give you the answer that way and it may not. It's not consistent, which is why we're not saying it's an advertised function at this point, right? Because it's saying, hey, look, I can't answer that question. But then I asked it differently. I didn't tell it to create something. I just said in chronological order, what are this, and this? And it gave me a little bit of an answer. It wasn't fleshed out enough, but I learned the document that I uploaded needed to be cleaned. I needed to clean the metadata off of it. So that was kind of a learning experience there. Let me see if there's another one. I think it was this one where I was going back and forth. Again, this is more medical records, going through this information. And I asked a very specific question, all of the results for every physical examination, right? I had to make it detail it out and it listed them out, right? It numbered them out 1 through 6, but then there were no dates, right? So then I said, well, regenerate response with corresponding dates for every physical examination. And then it added the date information onto those. So there is kind of, the back and forth and kind of playing around with it until it gives you the response you want. But once you figure that, like I said, once you figure that formula out, save that prompt somewhere on a Word document or on a sticky note within your desktop so that you have those there that you can utilize. And within Create, if what you have is in a Word document or you can convert it to Word cleanly, you can use this same functionality within the Word document, right? Have it summarize the document that's open, or you can ask questions about the document that's open without having to go through the upload process. If it's just not wanting to work correctly, you can do that within Word itself. If you've got it, there's a built-in PDF converter within Create where you can import a PDF. It just depends on, again, the document type and how it was originally created. Like there's some technical things on the background when it comes to the PDFs of how clean it will convert, but you have another option if you don't want to do the summarize and ask questions within, and where you have to upload a document. You would rather have it native, like on your system, and it never leave your system. Then you could do that through Create, because that's a plugin with Word. Just trying to see if there's something else that I wanted to show y'all. When you upload multiple files, you can do more than one file at once. That limit of the 400,000 characters is per file, and you can upload up to 10 files. Okay, so like this one had multiple files that I uploaded at the same time. And I can kind of see what I'm doing here. And then I could go across the summaries here. And then if I wanted to ask questions, I could. It would break down the responses for each document in a separate response. Now, something that may also, again, a kind of a non-conventional use, the summarize function, right? You can summarize a case, you can summarize a statute. But if there's something else that you're dealing with and you're like, I don't know, what I would, this is kind of lengthy. I really don't want to read all of this. I'm trying to find the one that I did. There was an executive order that dealt with, I wonder if it's this one. Yes. No, this was actually the ordinance. So this was the ordinance that California attorney was dealing with, with that one piece of, the financial assistance from the landlord. And I was like, let me upload that whole ordinance so I don't have to read the whole thing, because it got pretty lengthy. Like, let me upload that whole thing and let it summarize it for me. So then I could ask questions where it specifically talks about XYZ, right? And I was just asking it questions back and forth. And we were just kind of playing devil's advocate, asking different types of questions. Did it differentiate between single family homes or residences? And it gave basically the same response, right? I also uploaded, one time I uploaded an executive order that came out of, from the president's office last year, dealing with AI, who was going to regulate it, what decisions they had made about where it was going to go in the future, certain things, like the status of it at that point. And I just had the tool summarize that for me, because it was a pretty long executive order. And then I was asking it questions like, how did they define AI, all of the other things to where I could wrap my brain around it. So again, you can utilize this for a myriad of different things. You're only limited by your own creativity. And if you want to go down the rabbit hole even further, you can get on YouTube and search prompt writing. There is a formula to it when you're talking about like more open AI or commercially available AI. They all really use the same formula when it comes to drafting a prompt. But you can use those tools to draft you a prompt for this if you would like. Once you kind of know what you want to ask it, but you're not sure how to phrase it, you could ask, a commercially available AI tool if you're really struggling with it until you get the hang of it. Like, how would I draft a prompt to ask this, an AI tool, this to give me these details, right? And it will give you kind of a starting point to go from there. So you have multitude of options, and we're obviously here to help you. If you're struggling with any of that, we're definitely here to help. But those are the main functions right now. Does anyone have any questions on anything that's tied to either Lexis Plus or the AI tool that we've talked about?
I don't see any questions in the chat. I do know that was a lot of information.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
It's so much. If you guys ever want to schedule one-on-ones, if you ever want to send over a research question, ask about best practices, get information about whether or not your legal question is worded correctly, or maybe she can help word it in a way that you'd get better results. We're here for that as well. I know these trainings in themselves, they seem kind of long and tedious, and it's like, man, that's so much information to take in all at once. But we're here for more than just these long sessions as well. So just wanted to keep that in mind. Sorry, I didn't mean to butt in, Cheryl.
Yeah, and on that note, though, I was with the menus. I was looking at the subscription and the contract. Yeah, you guys are going to be with us for a long time, so we want to make this a nice, happy relationship for the next several years to come. So definitely let us know if there's anything that we can help you with. We would prefer to be your first, stopping point when you have questions versus having to call into customer support. But obviously, if you need an immediate, quick, fast answer, by all means, you can use the 1-800 number or the chat. But you have, personal Lexis research concierge folks at your service if you need anything. All right. Well, that is everything that I had. If no one else has any other questions,
are you all scheduling a follow-up for CourtLink at a later date?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep. CourtLink and Create.
Awesome.
For those folks that are going to do Create. But yep, we will get with Jackson and get that all scheduled.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Right.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I think that next one will be next Wednesday, the CourtLink and Create.
Yep.
Discussion. Perfect.
All right. Well, you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.